Greetings and welcome. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Going All In, Get the Edge You Need to Succeed. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Going All In, Get the Edge You Need to Succeed. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Going All In, Get the Edge You Need to Succeed. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Going All In, Get the Edge You Need to Succeed. My name is Dr. Erin McKinley. I'm Dr. Erin McKinley. I'm Dr. Erin McKinley.
All right, well, welcome.
Woo, that's right. Welcome to Going All In, Get the Edge You Need to Succeed. I am Dr. Erin McKinley, and yes, this is episode 99, and it will be the final episode of this podcast series that we've been having since 2020 here on YouTube. It's been quite a journey for those that have been with us throughout the duration of this podcast. It started as what I thought would be an interesting solution to the problem we had during COVID of not being able to be together in the same room. And I wanted my students at LSU to still benefit from being able to meet program directors and learn about graduate programs and dietetic internships and how to improve their application materials to apply to those programs through doing pretty much the same type of presentations that they would do in a classroom setting if they came to visit us, or what they would talk about with students at an internship fair. Had that displayed for you on a Zoom call. And the initial episodes were interesting. That very first semester, I invited students to sit in live. So if you watch some of the earlier episodes, we have questions from the audience. And then it got to be at one point so big and so busy, so many programs wanted to be a part of it, that I had to just schedule them whenever I could fit them in and whatever worked for all of those involved. And we had to leave the live participation part out of it. But I know that students still benefited from being able to watch those videos and then contact the directors afterwards, letting them know, hey, I saw you on that podcast. Can I get some more information? And over the years, we have had programs come back and let me know that they have recruited students who specifically had seen the podcast episode about their program and decided to reach out and apply, and that the podcast heavily influenced their decision to apply because they were able to see the director in kind of a casual setting talking about the program and being really honest about what they were looking for and how great their programs were. So I'm happy with the success that has had over the last 3 years. A major change that altered how this podcast kind of operated was the change in my position here at LSU to take over the graduate program here in the School of Nutrition and Food Sciences. And so I didn't think ethically that it was right for me to be creating content that specifically promoted other programs. Granted, yes, I know LSU doesn't have an internship, but we do have a graduate program, and we are expanding upon that graduate program. And I didn't want anyone to come back and say that I was naturally deferring everybody away from LSU. Because there are so many other graduate programs out there, we are still an option for graduate studies for students that happen to have a distance DI or want to come back and get a master's, so that they kind of keep up with those that are coming out with that requirement. And so when that change went into effect, I tried my best to institute topics that were professional development related, but I don't think that they caught on as much. There was maybe a few episodes here and there on some different topics or different speakers I was able to get a hold of that garnered some interest. But for the most part, I don't think that it was as exciting. And so things have gotten quite busy for me, seeing as though I have kind of closed out my 5th year here at the university. And no, I am not leaving LSU. That is not why I'm stopping the podcast. It's actually sort of the opposite. I go up for promotion and tenure this year. As of the recording of this episode, I should be getting my external reviewer notes back this week so I can update my packet before I send it over to the College of Ag and the Ag Center for review. And so I'll know hopefully by the end of the year, if not early 2024, if I will be promoted to associate professor with or without tenure. If we're going for tenure, I think we have enough to do that, but it's not always up to me. I've put in the work, and now it's up to those powers at be to make that decision. And so what I need to do in the meantime is really get the next 5 years of my time here at LSU really set up for success from a research standpoint more than anything, because I feel like the teaching is we're just getting better and better with how we do things and how we have things set up, and we are making adjustments to make the program better. And as I get promotion and tenure, that means I am more open to the possibility of taking on more administrative roles. Having tenure is kind of that check mark that needs to be there on someone's resume or at a university level to really be qualified and available to take on bigger roles within a university. And that's always been my goal, to take on bigger roles. So I'd certainly love to learn that as I go. So I have another 5 years, pretty much before I would go up for full professor. And so almost have to work twice as hard during the next 5 years to really make sure that the packet is still robust and that people can really see that, yes, I came out the gate swinging, and then I kept going and going and going and put in a lot of effort to build my portfolio when it comes to research, in addition to continuing to make this one of the best dietetics programs in the country, and hopefully one of the stronger graduate programs in nutrition and food science in the coming years. Will there be another podcast? Possibly. I don't know. I have an idea for one that would maybe take place in 2024. I'm really starting to think that no one wants to listen to just me anymore. If you've made it this far through this final episode, thank you. I'm getting to your questions. And really, is there a co-host that I could bring on? Is there another topic that we can focus on? Another theme? What is it that's really going to grab folks? I've also been given a little bit of advice from some undergrads that I have that the video aspect of the podcast, yeah, it's nice depending on what you're talking about, but a lot of times students would rather have something they can download and listen to while they're walking around campus, while they're doing whatever. And so maybe doing more of a podcast that's based in audio. Granted, we can still record video to use for whatever need we would, but that audio aspect is really the most important thing. And so that's something I'm taking into consideration as far as what that next chapter would look like. I do want to do maybe some kind of one-off, more, video diary vlog type episodes or videos on my YouTube to kind of document some things that are going on in my life and through this process, just to kind of show others kind of what's going on. That might include the promotion and tenure process. It might include something else. I do plan to film later this week for a potential episode. So there'll definitely be stuff that I will be putting out there to kind of educate those on all sorts of things. And so I have been hitting your questions so far. And so I did put it out there for y'all to send me some questions. I wanted to do an Ask Me Anything for episode 100, like a year ago, when I thought I would be doing more episodes more often and continuing this podcast, but kind of hit a lull and just decided that 99's a nice round number. Yes, I know it's not round, but I think of numbers and colors, and 9 is red and 2 reds together, and 9's 2 even whole other thing. For those students that know, when I imagine colors and numbers synonymously, and when I talk about things, I visualize a lot of what I say and try to describe that to others so they can understand exactly what I'm talking about. So I figured 99 was a good place to kind of stop. And it kind of helped with a fun name for the episode. One, how did you know that dietetics would be the field for you? What made you stick with it? Is there anything that you would change that got you to this point? And so for those that may not know, dietetics was not my first choice. I did not go to undergrad for nutrition or dietetics. I went to business school. I have an undergraduate degree or degrees in business administration and marketing. And I went on and worked in hospitality, in gaming, in the casino industry in the late 2000s. And the recession was really what made me want to shift focus. Being in a very cash and money driven industry is difficult when people don't have money to spend. And so it was not a great time to be in a cash business like that. But I think what the really big turning point for me was when I was finishing up my master's and I was finishing up the dietetic internship at Alabama, and I was, mentally ready to just go off and work and go back to being an adult. Because I was 30 years old or about to be 30 at that time, it was really the fact that there were tenured faculty members at Alabama that saw something in me that gave them enough, comfort to ask me to serve as a graduate assistant and to teach my own classes. And the fact that these individuals that I held in such high esteem as my major professors were seeing this in me, I took that as a sign that I should probably see where that takes me, because I've always been the type to really follow the lead of strong leadership that I've been a part of. I've worked for some really awesome people who were really great leaders, and I emulate to this day some of what they do. And when they asked me, do you think this is something that you would want to do? We think you would be good at it. I took that as, I must be good at it. I'm going to be good at it. I might as well try it. And I'd always imagined myself being a teacher in some way, even back to like when I was in high school. I always tried to imagine myself if I could be a high school teacher. And I was like, no, I think anything younger than 18 is probably a little young. So there was a little bit of a weird transition to starting to teach classes on my own. And this year is the start of my 11th year of being a college instructor, college professor, which is nuts in some ways. But what really made me stick with it, because when you're going through a PhD program, it's very challenging, mentally, physically, emotionally, everything. Those that mentor you, yes, they're your major professor, they're your mentor, whatever you want to call it, doesn't mean that they are the best at that. And everyone has their mentoring style. And there were times where I did not feel that I was mentored very well. Didn't know how to describe it at the time, but fast forward to today, I can really look back and kind of see where I was screaming for help without saying anything at all, and hoping that my major professors would notice how much distress I was in, as far as, that kind of things going on in your life, and then all the pressure that, goes into finishing your classes and getting your research off the ground, and then still in the back of your head thinking, what am I going to do for a job when this is all over? So I have to plan things out accordingly so that when the time comes, I'm ready to apply for jobs, and then finding out you don't qualify for certain jobs, or certain people don't want you to apply to their institution. And what really made me stick with it is just my internal, I don't know what it is. I like to call it spite now. I do everything out of spite as a haha. I don't ever want to quit on things. I never wanted anybody to think that I was a quitter. And in times where I didn't really want to finish my PhD, I was like, screw it. I'm going to do this just to shove it in everyone's face, who at that time I felt was giving me a hard time with whatever was going on. The further out you are from that type of traumatic experience in a grad program, the harder it is to remember what you were upset about and what you were mad about. I just wanted to be done. I knew I had a really great opportunity as far as my GA position. And would I change anything that got me to this point? If you'd asked me this question years ago, I don't know how I would have answered it, but thinking about where I am right now, no, because when I finished school in August of 2017, I was the only person in my cohort. So all the peers that I had graduated with or started with that had graduated either in May or in August of that year. I was the only one that technically didn't have a faculty position job, didn't have a job. And so I was teaching adjunct, which is part-time at UA, and they threw me a bone and hired me as a full-time advisor because there was some change in, personnel and staff, and there was nobody else as well versed on that curriculum as I was at the time to really just jump in, especially in that fall during advising. And they have that program has twice as many students as I have now, so it's a lot. I was kind of bummed for a little while, so that kind of slowed down my pushing my research pubs out because I didn't really know what the future held. But then this job coming up at the time that it did, like the funny, whatever you want to call it-ness of it, me finding the LSU job posting the same week as the Alabama LSU game was just hilarious, because anyone who understands that dynamic, it's this like LSU hate week. And I was expecting my husband, when I told him that LSU was hiring, to be like, oh, I don't want to go there, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, that sounds really cool. You should look into it. LSU's a good university, da, da, da. And I was surprised by that. So that kind of helped move things forward. And yeah, I started this job at like the drop of a hat, and it started out kind of wonky with being, thrown into having to go up for reaccreditation within like the first 6 months, and this being a new position. And, I knew maybe 50% of what I was supposed to be doing, and I learned the rest as I was going. And changes in leadership within the department, in the university, it's always changing, and then getting used to the dynamic within a department, the personalities and the hierarchy of things. And it's a lot. And do I wish I maybe had not said certain things to certain people along the way? Probably. I can get a little hot-headed and kind of express how I'm feeling or point out things that people don't think should be pointed out. And yeah, some of that stuff could have been taken back, but I don't think anything that major that I've done could change. Of course, I wish I had written a little bit more. It's not my favorite thing to do, but that's something I'm trying to work on over the next year to really push out publications and bring in some more grad students that are maybe just as good at that as I am, to kind of team up with to get more of those publications and get my work out the door. My favorite niches in dietetics, I don't really have any favorite ones. I think there's some that are interesting. I was just having this conversation with my husband the other day. There's a rumor at LSU that I don't like sports nutrition, and that is definitely not the case. I think it's very interesting. My only weird thing about it is that it is so popular among students. It's may not be realistic for some to put all their chips in that pile, all their eggs in that basket, to go into sports, because eventually there's going to be a little bit of saturation at the professional level, saturation at the collegiate level, Olympic sports, and people are going to have to get more creative with how they use performance nutrition. And that was kind of what I meant in any conversations I may have had about that, and that somehow got interpreted as I don't like it. Is it for me right now in my life? No. If we went back 10 years, I probably maybe would have looked into it a little bit more. I had a different attitude about nutrition 10, 12 years ago when I was a student. I thought about it from more of a, we need to be helping people get better so they can live longer, not help people to get better performance-wise so they can make more money. Like there was like this weird ethical thing with me where I was more concerned with people that couldn't help themselves. And so I kind of had a wall up against sports and performance nutrition, but that's just because I wasn't well versed on it myself. And so if I could go back and say I was forced to go into performance nutrition, I definitely would do more with like boxers, UFC fighters, MMA, even like WWE their person probably just orders their food more than anything. They don't really have dietitians, but something more fun in that realm. For whatever reason, I gravitate towards that. I actually have on my list to contact the UFC RD to see if there was more than one, but to see if they're around this week when I'm in town, to see kind of what they do over there. Other niches, I really think this new aspect that's going to be coming out is going to be utilizing dietitians and those that have education in nutrition and health science start to get hired by companies like CVS, Walgreens, and then insurance companies, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, all the big ones that are out there. They are moving more in this direction of really trying to work on the prevention side. It only took how many years for them to realize how much money that people spend and how much the insurance companies spend on keeping people alive through just chronic disease management. And we know that not a big focus has been on prevention. As much as we've tried, that hasn't been a goal for a lot of entities. And so I was just reading the other day, CVS is based out of my hometown where I was born in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and they're laying off like 5,000 people so that they can kind of pool together those resources to hire individuals that are more focused, that will get paid more because they're worth more, but because of their degrees and credentials, to really focus on improving like this health and wellness and really health hub thing that CVS has going on. So that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds as they kind of get that together. So I think there's going to be definite things that people who are looking for a different avenue in nutrition that still want to work with clients, maybe want to be more remote, may have more of that opportunity. But as far as like, niches, it comes down to what you like to do. And no one can tell you what you like to do. You have to kind of go out and see it for yourself. And that's why I've always stressed the aspect of shadowing to find out what you like and what you don't like. Meet RDs, talk to RDs who work in those areas. They'll be honest with you. You rarely ever meet an RD that's going to sugarcoat if they don't like their job. They will tell you why they don't like their job and then why they're staying there. And it's usually because they're waiting for something better to come along. And so that's kind of the really nice thing about our profession, is that we're really honest on if we like our job or not. I think a really great niche that a lot of people don't think about is getting into education. It's like everybody is going to need a master's. That automatically qualifies you to teach at an undergraduate level. And you could do that adjunct, part-time, try it out, see if you like it. You could be a full-time faculty member at just the instructor level. If you go on and get a PhD, that qualifies you to be a faculty member, to teach full-time, do research and teach, to do something like I do. There's this push for folks with PhD to go back into industry, but you have to remember that there's some of us that have to stay in academia to continue the tradition of academia. If we ran out of people that could teach classes and to run these programs, we'd be in trouble. And so really think about getting that doctorate degree, PhD, practice doctorate, whatever it may be, and maybe come back to the university setting and teach. I've had a coworker who, she even says, in a million years, I never would have thought I would have this job as a full-time instructor and helping run a program, but I love it and I'm obsessed with it and I can't see myself doing anything else now. And so sometimes you really have to kind of branch out and try it and see if you like it. It might take you a couple years, you're in school for a while. It's like, you want to get past that and then feel like you've done something and then come back to the university setting to start sharing your wisdom. You don't need that long. I jumped in the next semester. I wasn't even an RD yet. I passed the RD exam the first semester I was teaching. It's kind of one of those things where if you taught the content before, or if you learned the content before, I should say, you can teach the content. And as you go through your career, you kind of accumulate different experiences that can help with teaching those classes better. So I touched on research a little bit. So you don't have to do research to get a doctorate. If you do a practice doctorate, there's more of those programs coming out. That's going to be more, check those programs out. North Florida has one. I'm not sure exactly what they require as like a capstone project, some sort of final thing that's going to seal the degree. It still could be some form of research. It's just done a little differently. PhD is definitely dissertation research, and it's done a certain way. We prefer folks to be on campus. The types of programs that you'll see that are online based are not going to be as hardcore in research, and you might not get the same experience because you kind of really need to be in the same room with somebody hands-on, having these conversations, doing the boots on the ground research work, so that you can then in the future mentor others. And so if you're interested in getting into research at your institution, you just have to ask. Some universities like LSU, we have LSU Discover program, which is specifically made for undergraduates. And there's a listing of faculty members across the university. So it doesn't have to be somebody in nutrition. There could be somebody doing work in the vet school or medical school at your institution, dental school, the biology department, another ag department, another whatever department that isn't super related to nutrition, but you'd be learning skills that you think you may want to use in the future. Say it's survey research, or if it's doing DNA work in the lab, learning the technique is the most important thing. What separates me from some of the researchers in my department is that I step foot into a lab. I don't know how to use 99% of what's in there. I used to. When I was in high school, I was very trained in doing DNA microphage and doing a lot of that work, but that part of my brain does not remember that very much. And I am solely focused on the type of research that I do with surveys and talking to folks, interviews, qualitative, really starting to design questions to ask very specific things about psychological processes with relation to health and health behavior. And that is my expertise. And I learned that by doing research in both nutrition and health science, just based off of where I was for my PhD program. And so as an undergrad, you can branch out and do research with pretty much whoever on campus that wants to and is willing to mentor. The faculty members at times like to see that variety of, I just don't have pre-meds in my lab all the time. I have nutrition students and kines students and whatever. As long as the student is eager to learn, that's usually all we really need. It's like, if you're coming to us, we're making a big assumption that you're going to put in the work that you need to do to get the experience that you want out of it, especially if you're doing it for free. If you're volunteering your time, we're going to expect you to put in, a decent amount of time to get done what you want to get done, get the experience and what you want out of it. If you're fortunate enough, sometimes after a trial run, you might get hired on in the lab if that faculty member has funding. Sometimes, it leads to really good recommendation letters. They might introduce you to other faculty who are doing other research, and it might lead to, a master's program. And you might decide to go and get funding for your master's and do research. It might lead to PhD funding in the future. You never know. It's all kind of adding things to your toolbox. And so just ask. You can ask your DPD director, undergraduate coordinator, department head, any faculty member that's doctor, whoever, they probably do research of some kind. And so they can kind of lead you in the right direction. If not in their lab, they can lead you to another person's lab, just kind of based off of what you think you want to do. But it is good to have at least an idea of what you think you want to do. When you say, well, I don't know, I just want to learn. It's like, read some research articles. If you don't like what's spoken about in the research article as far as the methodology goes, that might not be something you want to learn. But if you read through a method section and you're like, wow, that sounds really cool that they did XYZ, find the person that does XYZ. So where is my research headed in the next few years? So I said earlier that I'm setting myself up for the next 5 years. And so I am actually working in the next maybe 9 months, 10 months to finish out a big breastfeeding project that I've been working on for the last 5 years since I got here. I do intend to still integrate breastfeeding and lactation into my work. I'm actually leaning towards new directions. So at the base of everything that I do, it's survey research, cross-sectional survey research, and building questions to really measure aspects of psychological thinking and decision making with regard to health behavior theory. And you can essentially insert any health behavior you want. And so the health behavior that I'm starting to lean towards are medicinal mushrooms. Where this came from, kind of random. LSU and the LSU Ag Center has a therapeutic cannabis research center, and they have funding each year to support kind of pilot studies, smaller studies, anywhere from like $50,000 to $100,000 studies to look at therapeutic cannabis or medicinal plants. And so they put out a call for some pre-proposals this summer, and that kind of got the wheels turning. Automatically, I was like, oh yeah, therapeutic cannabis. But then I was like, maybe there's something else out there. And then herbal medicine. There's probably too much out there with herbal medicine. And then something kept coming back to mushrooms. And so there's so much with mushrooms right now, from the culinary aspect to the psychedelic aspect to the adaptogenic aspect. And the more that I looked into it, the more it got super, super interesting. And I kind of realized, like, do I need to be in my Timothy Leary era? I think I might need to. If you don't know who that is, look it up, have a little giggle, and know that I have read and watched everything about him, and definitely want to do some more interesting research with regard to ag business marketing, with regard to product development of using medicinal mushrooms and adaptogenic mushrooms in food products to help stimulate the economy locally. So that's kind of the direction I'm hoping to go in. I just submitted that pre-proposal for about a $30,000 study. If they like it, they'll ask me to write a bigger one, full out of everything that I plan to do. And hopefully if that gets funded, that would be kind of parlay those results into bigger and bigger studies, and start to bring in more folks from across the college, from horticulture and ag business and whoever, to really see where we can take this type of research. And so if you start to see things about mushrooms lately on my social media or my office, that is just like my thing right now. Everyone goes through their phases. It's my thing. And you never know, there might be some sort of medicinal mushroom aspect that might connect to breastfeeding, and lactation and milk supply, and the thinking of, increased milk supply. That might be there, and that might be something that I look at. Not sure yet. We will have to figure that out. All right, going back to some questions from y'all. Biggest advice for internships. This is kind of different for everybody, but my biggest advice is to go into your internship experience confidently. It's like you are matched, you are accepted to that program. They want you there. You possess this, the knowledge from a good DPD program that you completed. You brought with you enough to get started. Obviously, you're not going to know everything, and it's okay not to know everything, but you brought enough with you to really jump in 2 feet first, head first, whatever, and really get those initial rotations off the ground. And yeah, you're going to encounter situations where you're like, I really don't know what the F I'm doing. And that is where your preceptors come in handy. If you have mentors, they can text, I got this issue, I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do. What do you think? We have limited information, but we might be able to give you some advice. Really network, use your internship as a networking opportunity. It is essentially, however long, a year and a half, however long your program is, or however long you're at each of those rotations, it's like one long job interview. And you may get, if you're interested in staying in one of those areas, you might get a job offer before you're done with your rotation, or you're done with the program as a whole. And it's always good to kind of keep those folks in the back of your mind, in the case that you don't go into any of those areas, but one day someone asks you, oh, hey, do you know anybody that specializes in this? And you're like, I had a preceptor who did that. Let me get you in contact. There's all the little things that the DI director, wherever you end up, is going to tell you on how to prepare and whatnot, and let them do their thing. But you are more than free to bring other study aids and tools and things you've accumulated from your time as an undergrad with you, if that's going to help you do better in your eyes. If you have like a little cheat sheet for your equations, or your stuff for tube feeding, or you have little notations to help you remember things, put those in your book. Like you should be carrying around a binder, some sort of professional binder that has all your notes in it so that you can be, doing the best you can in that particular rotation. But it's really just keeping an open mind, really understanding that the competency-based stuff that you have to do, it's just stuff you have to do. It's not your life's work. It's not the end of the world. How you do on that doesn't define you. In the future as a dietitian, you might think some of it's stupid and it's not worth your time. And that's fine, but at the end of the day, deep down, it is helping you out. You just don't see that yet. You'll see it at some point in the future when you maybe encounter that again. But remember that you spending your time doing the internship is not just all you have to do. There are a lot of assignments that you have to get done to show our accreditation body that you not only possess the knowledge, but you possess the competency base, and that we trust you to go on and take that RD exam and be an entry level dietitian. And so, roll your eyes to yourself when you're not around anybody, if that is really what you have to do to get through it. What has made you successful as a director? Well, I think starting off, when I got into dietetics, I had a really fun DPD director, Alvin New, at University of Alabama. And he was always, once I kind of expressed to him that was the direction I was going in with my faculty positions, that I wanted to have more of this DPD director role, he was like, oh my God, this is great. You'd be perfect for it. Because he knew how I operated and my management style and how I was able to manage people and lead people as I did through his classes. And so he was confident that I could handle the amount of work. So having that little push from somebody else that was doing the same job definitely helped. And then honestly, what's made me successful is that I am extremely grateful to be where I am, and to have the job that I have, to make the money that I have. If you have tuned into previous episodes of the podcast, especially that one with my sister, a couple episodes back, we talk about how we were raised in an environment where making money is the most important thing. That's your livelihood, and you do everything to make sure that you can do your job and keep getting your paycheck. And so going from having a full-time job in my 20s, making like money, like good at the time, it could have been better, but I didn't have strong enough legs to stand on to negotiate anything. Whole other story for maybe a vlog another day. To going back to grad school and making like $10 an hour as a research assistant in an office, and then getting my GA position and making like a piddly stipend every month. And I wasn't making any money, to being offered more money than I had ever made in my life at this job. Granted, I did not negotiate, and I probably could have gotten more money, but I was just like, I'll take it. And I've worked really hard to put the performance in to make sure I get raises every year, and to make sure that all goes well. And so that's a big motivator to keep me going. That's another question someone asked, what keeps you motivated? It sounds, I don't know, weird to say like I'm motivated by the money, but having a steady income is just, it's been ingrained in my brain. And so I'm very proud of how much money I make. I think it's aspirational. So I'm not, when students ask, I don't give them specific numbers, but I'll kind of, give them a ballpark, and I don't say it to be showing off. I kind of show like, this is the potential. Y'all look past academia as something that isn't an option for you in the future. And, X number of years out, I'm making this, versus somebody who goes into clinical, same number of years out, isn't making anywhere near how much I'm making. And that it's something that they maybe should think about. So that's definitely a motivator. Another motivator is just getting to know the students every year and being invested in them. So every senior class, again, now that I've been here for a while, like this incoming senior class, I was like, oh my God, I've known some of these kids since they were in high school and came for their visits with their parents. And so you get to know these students over, 3 years, going into their 4th year, and you're invested in their success just as much as they're invested in their own success, because you just want to see them do well because they're good people. Other things that keep me motivated, I think I kind of covered all of them. Other stuff is just, I'm so type A with like, everything has to be like I just don't want any boxes to not get checked. So it's that, just if, all hell is breaking loose in this department, at least I know I have my shit together. That's all I really care about. At the end of the day, I can step back and be like, I did my job. I did X, Y, and Z. We're good over here. How can I help fix the mess y'all created over there? So that's kind of part of it. All right. So I have some fun questions that some folks. So what exam are you studying for? Okay. I did post on my Instagram, I'm studying for an exam. So, and this kind of goes into another question someone asked. Where is it? Something about, is being a faculty member like being a student forever? Yes and no. So being a faculty member, especially when you do teaching and you do research, is that you still have to teach, you still have to grade. It's almost like doing the homework. When you're doing the research and writing the papers, still writing articles, that feels like being a student. When it comes to credentials, you feel like a student. And so right now I have what's called the CHES credential, Certified Health Education Specialist. And since I've been a certified health education specialist for 5 years, I automatically qualify for the Master Certified Health Education Specialist exam, MCHES. And so I made the mistake of accidentally putting that on my goals. So every year here at LSU, we have to put, when we do our annual review, we have to kind of put our goals for the upcoming year. And I had put that on my goal sheet like 2 years ago. And I kept pushing it off, saying like, oh, no, I just didn't have time, until my boss was like, hey, are you going to get that credentialing exam done? And I was like, yeah, I should probably do that. And they only offer it twice a year, April and October. And so I literally am squeezing this exam in between traveling to Denver for Fancy, coming back, taking that exam, and then traveling to Maine for a USDA research event with some colleagues of mine. And so essentially, for those that are wondering what's the MCHES exam about, everything I've been studying is everything that's taught in a community nutrition class, especially if you took community nutrition here at LSU with that more public health aspect to it. It's all of the same information, just a little bit more in-depth, advanced, deep, so to speak. And so I have my note card. I'm a note card studier still. That worked when I was a student. It's working for me now. I have things printed out. I have color-coded stuff. I have a whole box of note cards everything's labeled. And so this sits on my desk if you ever see it and happen to come here. And so it's essentially going to add another letter to after my name, but it will definitely show that I have mastered and have that expertise. Because as I'm studying for this information, I'm like, I know this stuff. I teach this stuff every spring. This is some of the stuff I know the most. So I'm pretty confident that I will be okay when it comes to the exam. It's just, you just have to go through the motions and go through the study guide and make sure that you're versed in everything, just in case, because you never know what kind of questions they're going to throw out for that. All right. So I'm going to do one last question or so to wrap up this episode, because, I think all good things need to come to an end. And so what have you been prepping for as far as traveling for conferences? Oh, so I have a conference coming up. I'm doing a poster and an oral session at the International Lactation Consultants Association annual meeting that's in Las Vegas in August. And I submit to that like every other year. And what happens is you submit your abstract as a poster, and the top 4 or 5 scored abstracts get put into a panel for an oral session. And so I was able to do that in Atlanta. I had both a poster and oral session back in 2019. I cannot even remember. Was that before COVID? Yeah, it was. Oh, wow. That was the last time I was in Vegas. I went from Atlanta to Vegas right afterwards to celebrate. And now I'm in Vegas again this year for the conference, and I have poster one night, oral session the next day. So I'm top 4 scored, which is kind of cool. And so sometimes these places like to give you awards for that kind of stuff and accolades and whatnot. So that's always nice to know that they think my research is interesting, but then they also think it's good. Big difference, that it was done well and that is interesting. I do, and the one thing I do like about that conference that kind of goes into this last question, which is hilarious. So I end up going to a lot of like international conferences without ever having to leave the US because I don't have a passport. And one of the questions was, is it true you don't have a passport because you're not allowed to have one? Okay, I'm allowed to have a passport. I haven't done anything to eliminate that possibility. I just never have gone through the process of actually getting a passport. It is not high up on my list of things. I have been saying that I need to do this for literally 7 or 8 years now. I think my husband and I have been married 7 years, and every year we're like, hey, I gotta get a passport, blah, blah, blah. And it's finally gotten to be just in the last like 3 months or so that I've heard people talking about their trips, just going to Canada of all places. And I'm like, oh man, I'll go back to Canada. I haven't been there since 1990. My sister's going to Switzerland this month to compete. And it's like, oh, you can just like hop on a plane and go to Switzerland. I cannot do that. I can't even go to Mexico if I wanted to. I can go to Puerto Rico, but I can't go to Jamaica. And so little things like that. So I will work on it. I will work on getting my passport, so that in the case that there actually is an international conference outside of the US that I actually want to go to, I'll actually get it. Oh, but thank you for that random question, because it probably sounded shady every time I said, well, I don't have one. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this bad boy up. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast over the last 3 years. I have certainly appreciated all of the feedback that I've received and all of the views. So please continue to check out my YouTube to see what's going on with me, as I do plan to film some vlogs over the next year while I decide what I want to do for a podcast. If you have any ideas, feel free to drop those in the comments and I will check them out. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't lose track of what I'm up to, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm just taking a little break. But I'll see you later.